For DMs that plan to do more than one campaign in their journey, there is going to be a choice you'll have to make, and it's usually best made before you do your first one. And that's whether or not you plan on using the same world consecutively throughout all of your campaigns, or you're going to plan to make a entirely new world for each campaign setting. As usual, we're going to go ahead and go over the pros and cons of each side because there are some for both, and we're going to go ahead and offer some solutions as well that you can use to help mediate those problems. So, going over the first method, if you were to use the same world consecutively throughout your campaigns, this usually is done by the different parties either taking place in different time periods of the world, or the more common one is they take place in different continents or land settings separate from the previous group. Whichever way you do it, the first pro on the list is that you're going to be able to take your time and go at the pace that you want for your players to uncover the lore of your world and also meet its characters. You don't really need to rush as many things for the sake of them experiencing all the content in your game because it's going to be played out through multiple campaigns. So if they don't meet a certain kingdom or a certain deity, then they can meet it with the next party. So you don't really feel a need to have to throw things in their face. Speaking about the party, however, probably my favorite thing on this list for the pro side is that player creation becomes remarkable. Something that is really cool with this is that a player might make one of their new characters have a backstory that ties into an event that the players played or caused in a previous campaign. As the world gets unraveled, the players will start to make very story-rich characters. And it goes without saying that with previous campaigns come previous characters, and player NPCs is an amazing thing. Players can get very attached to their characters, and if it's a character that completed their adventure, it holds a special place in their heart. It's both a sad and amazing feeling to retire a character, but for the player, being able to see that character become a powerful figure in the lore as it continues it's gonna make their day. And not even to mention those epic moments where the new party can meet one or maybe even two of those characters as they are level 20 and they're rising up or whatever level you set them out. It is nothing short of an epic feeling that gets the whole table cheering. Now, here is the most rewarding one for you as a DM, and that is the attachment. The world becomes a personal attachment to not only the DM but the players as well. It's their fantasy home, and they're fighting each campaign to protect or destroy it. In D&D, it's usually both at the same time. But earning the player's investment makes every risk, every danger, and every victory that much better. NPCs and locations will start to matter more and more for the players because they're spending so much time connecting with them and learning about them. The personal attachment you get from each player makes the world feel more alive than anything else can. Alright, now comes the part I gotta warn you about. The first thing we need to talk about is the domino effect. Now, one thing about running the same world is that events are carried out into the next campaign as well. So, consequences can become extremely volatile. We may have had campaigns that descended into chaos, and in a one-time campaign, there's a nuclear red button that you can click and it wipes everything out. But for continued ones, the effects remain. The more important consequence, however, is player perception of NPCs. I've seen situations where a great NPC is just introduced to the wrong party. What I mean by that is that the NPC themselves is greatly designed and roleplayed by the DM, but the chemistry of the current party just doesn't match with them at all. This might cause a reputation of that perception through the next characters as well. And that's where it gets pretty bad, hence the domino effect of previous actions and knowledge affecting the next. The next point we're going to talk about is one that D&D is most famous for, and that's commitment. For this to work to its full capability, it's probably the single biggest commitment you have to make as far as D&D goes. Not just for the DM, but the players as well. They're dedicating years upon years to be in the same fantasy world. With real-life events and changes also coming into play, it's sometimes impossible to keep a group held for that long. Some groups simply, honestly, and tragically have limited time. The commitment from you, however, is not only running that world, but for you as the DM to stay as a DM. I'm sure you've heard the term forever DM thrown around, and this is an instance where it becomes true. While you can have one-shots with other players or maybe other campaigns formed simultaneously, you need to be prepared to do a marathon and not a sprint. The final thing to talk about when running the same world consecutively is that it takes precision. Piggybacking a bit off the domino effect, mistakes can become permanent in your campaign, and a big enough mistake can just stop the entire thing in its tracks. You need to keep a consistent level of power scaling and threat levels. If you have the first party be at the level of slaying deities and the next one gets TPK'd by some boar, the players will compare the two and just ultimately feel like this one's worse. Alright, now we're done covering the boring cons. Let's go over some solutions. So DMs usually will do this method of separating the continents within the same world as a way to separate characters and events. It allows the DM to make entirely new characters, kingdoms, and quests, yet keep the familiar worlds that the players know and love. This also allows you to slowly drop breadcrumbs of new areas they'll explore in the next campaign. But it also can help you reference events in areas they affected in previous campaigns. The point is everything is kind of starting to tie together like spiderweb. But so long as you have the different parties take place in different continents, you kind of have a newly established playground to be able to do whatever you creatively want to do. The only thing you have to respect and adhere to is whatever lore you use for the creation of the universe, the world, its rules, its deities, stuff like that are kind of the more overlying big picture things. But when it comes to the micro, you're free to do what you want. Now, a solution for the commitment problem. The same world does not ultimately need to mean the same group of players. While it is ideal to have them all, I know, a more realistic experience is that you're going to have players filter in and out between adventures. These new players, though, will definitely experience a story-rich world, as it's being developed by both the DM and the players. Also, if those players ever do return and come back as those characters that the others may have heard about or even encountered, it makes for really, really cool moments. Now, speaking of reunion, though, and old characters coming back, and to put that in effect, let's talk about power for a bit. Now, if you're fortunate enough to get that long-term campaign where multiple adventures have been played with the same group, and now you're finally ready to wrap up the journey, this is my way of wrapping it up. Whether you decide your players got to level 15 or 17 or even made it all the way to 20, you should decide that the final campaign is going to be the most intense, and as such, these characters will naturally become the most powerful. Now, all the characters and parties that were made, have each player make the tough choice of deciding one of those characters to play. And then, you're going to form a super team to put an end to the journey. This allows the players to get one final campaign to play with their favorite characters that they've made in this whole journey, and immortalize them within the world. It also allows you to give them those ridiculous powers, but only after all the campaigns and journeys and hardships have been experienced. This way, everything doesn't feel inconsistent and other characters are objectively stronger than the other ones. The thing is, though, no matter who they choose for their characters, make sure that you still have the other player characters be in the lore and perform heroic things or even maybe sacrifices, so it doesn't feel like you've ditched all the heroes that they've made. That'll just about wrap the first half of this video. This went on for a bit long, so I apologize. But if what you do is planning to use the same world, then I wish you the best of luck. Go out there and do a good job. Now let's talk about if you wanted to do a new world. Now, the biggest pro about jumping into a new world is there's no bars on you. With a new world, you have complete creativity again to go absolutely wild. You aren't obligated to respect established lore or rules, which can let you do the crazy things that you have been envisioning for so long. And if those crazy things turn out to be an absolutely terrible mistake that you should have never made, it is a temporary penalty. If you make a mistake, it's not as big of a deal. The world was designed for a single campaign, so if all hell breaks loose, then so be it. It's a world that ends in disaster. At the same time, if the party TPKs, oh boy, it's let's move on angle. Probably the best thing on this list, as there was in the previous one, is the humor. These campaigns are naturally less serious than running the same world for the reason that the players don't have as much of an investment towards it yet. In its best case, while it might not make you tear up or have tense situations, it will make you laugh harder than you ever had before. There is something special about a session that is pure comedy and has everybody laughing the night away. That's not to say it can't happen in the other method, but for this one, you're more likely to be laid back and amplify things into comical effects. It's also in this realm of comical effects that you get the most unique characters. While not being story rich, this is often where you get character concepts that are completely wild. Someone who looks like a human, but their dad is a minotaur, their mom's a centaur, and they got both human halves and just look normally human. It's stuff that just makes you laugh overall. While it's not appropriate for the more serious tone campaigns, this is the part where you get those funny character designs, and they could be very fun and very funny to look at. Now, jumping into the cons. This will be pretty quick, but the first one that is actually probably the biggest issue is that it's going to take a lot of writing, because a new world means a new set of rules for creation, how deities are played, and even how races are played. It won't be as bad for the short-term campaigns that might only last for a couple months, but making a new world for each campaign will eat up a lot of your time. Nothing that's impossible, but something to be aware of. The next thing is that there is a bit of a meme factor. Expect these campaigns to usually be a bit more memed than serious, and that's perfectly fine if that's what you want. But if you want it to be serious, then make sure you explain that to your players before they get the funny ideas that they want to run with. While a comic relief character can always work, a comic relief player could be disruptive. So just make sure you have that transparency between you and the players. Now, the biggest thing to worry about on this list is what I call disregarded punishment. With one-time worlds and as such one-time characters, players might not respect punishment as much. It is a sign of bad role-playing if they're so dismissive it becomes out of character anger, but it typically is a result of a bad player, not a bad campaign. That being said, though, be extremely careful with these situations. You need to essentially be able to decipher when a player is being dismissive and when a character is being dismissive. It's perfectly fine and in their rights to have their character be carefree and not really understand punishment or the rules because they're young or however they want to spin it, as long as the player themselves is role-playing that well. So this is something to bring up ahead of time so you don't feel like they're disrespecting your authority in some sense or anything like that. And don't take it too personally if it's a character thing. It's perfectly fine. It's part of the game. Now let's jump into the solutions. This solution goes for anything in general for the first one, but as always, we're going to be talking about kind of them in order. And the first one I talked about was that there's a lot of writing to be done. There's something I like to do called recycled writing, and this does not mean that I grab the exact same thing that they've seen or played and put it back in the next one, but it's an extremely effective method that can be used to fill content, in the sense that what it does is that if the players had the option between Quest A and Quest B, and let's say they chose Quest A, I'll grab Quest B or whatever quest was not taken, and I'll put it in the next campaign. It sounds like common sense. Most people would do it. A lot of people don't think of it, though. They think, oh, that was an option wasted and gone down the hill. I have to scrap it and throw it in the trash. Don't do that. Grab it and save it for your next campaign. Each path they didn't take, each item, each character they did not meet, that does not mean it's wasted time. You could just simply put it in your next campaign. The solution for the next one about your campaign being a little more memed is, honestly, enjoy it. Your time to have that campaign worthy of a book of its own will come. So don't stress over it so much that you ruin your own fun in the game. As long as your players are having fun and they look forward to the session, then enjoy that. You are being an amazing DM for them. Now, this last part is once again where I was saying gets a bit tricky, but if your player is disregarding punishment too much, and it's becoming an out of character thing that's disrupting the game, you're going to have to give them the boot. It's such a packed situation, however, that I'll probably make an entire video dedicated to just this situation. But part of your job as the DM is to manage the group and their happiness. But with that, I just took up a lot of your guys' time. Thank you so much if you stayed till the end and watched it. I hope you guys are enjoying this content and you're learning a thing or two. And write down in the comments ideas you guys have for the worlds and stuff. I love seeing what you guys are able to show me and have me learn as well. But overall, have a great time, guys. Go out there and write. Enjoy a nice cup of coffee on me.